Welcome back, everybody. This is Shmoopy909, and we're going to be going over variables and primitive data types in the second episode of Let's Code in C. Now, after reviewing the last episode on YouTube, I noticed that the font was a little bit hard to read, so we're going to increase the font size, hopefully, to make the font easier to read. Now we're just going to create our standard C source file. Nothing new here from the last episode with standard.io.h, which has a printf, which we're going to be using to print to the terminal here. We have int main void, which is the entry point into the program. Remember that the code that will be executed in the program will be from this bracket to this bracket. Now this episode is on primitive data types, and the three primitive data types, actually we'll go over four. The four primitive data types we're going to go over is int, float, double, and char. Now int is short for integer and can hold integer numbers. Float stands for floating point number, which can hold decimal spaces. Like an integer is 1, 2, 3. A floating point number would be like 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. It can hold up to 8 to 12. I'm not sure the exact number of decimal spaces. Pretty good number. A double stands for a double precision floating point number. It has double the amount of digits that you can store after the decimal space. If a float can hold like 12 digits after the decimal space, a double can hold like 24. And most of the time we'll be using double unless you're on a machine that is really cramped for memory, like on handheld devices. Then using floats instead of doubles where appropriate might be better, but for big computers we'll just use double. And char is the last one, which holds characters. ABC, 1, 2, 3. Those are examples of characters. Alright, so let's get started with how to actually declare a variable. Now, to declare a variable, we need to give the variable a type. Now, we're going to start off with integers. So we'll have a type of int. Give it a variable name. The name can be anything you want. So we'll just call this int1. Now, I said the variable can be any name you want, but it cannot be reserved words. Words that are reserved are words like int, return. Pretty much words that are highlighted with a funny color are reserved words. Now we're going to use the assignment operator, which is a little equal sign, as you see there. Now what the assignment operator does is says take whatever is on the right of the assignment operator and put it into the variable on the left of the assignment operator. Now it is important to note that the right hand side has to be of the same type as the left hand side. We cannot put 5.5 into an integer. It can only hold integers. So now we have a variable called int1 of type int with the value of 5. Okay. Now last time we looked at printf, we could only type in some characters and print out something to the screen. But what if we want to print out a variable? If we did this, okay, that would not work. So what we do is we use something called a format string in printf. I'm going to use the term placeholders. Now, to me, a placeholder is a better name. So placeholder, I'll say, for a int type is %d. Okay? And then you put a comma, and you put the variable name. Now, what printf does, it'll say, okay, %d, okay, you want to print out an integer, and then it'll look over after the comma and see, okay, this is the integer you want to print out. And of course, the /n is the new line character that we learned from the last episode, which will just make the cursor skip a line. Okay. So let's compile it and run it. And there you go. Print out the value of 5, which we gave to int1 earlier. Now what if we want to print out more than one variable? We could either have lots of printfs with lots of these little things, which is kind of tedious, or we could put more placeholders inside the printf and then just add on another value. Let's say we'll give this value 10 this time. It's not a variable name. You don't have to give it a variable name. You can give it raw values. Basically, this int1 will just change into a 5 when it compiles. Okay? And printf has a very strict format. It'll take the first %d and match it up with the first value you give it after the comma, and this %d will go to this value, the second value after the comma. Okay. Now when we compile this and run it, there you go, 5, 10, just like we thought. Alrighty. Now the next primitive data type we're going to go over is float. Like I said, float is good for decimal space numbers. Let's put 1.5 in there. Now for floating point numbers, we usually put an F at the end, just for clarity. It is not required, but putting an F there just lets anyone who's reading your code, yes, this is a floating point number. Okay. Now let's add it to our print statement. Now we cannot use %d for a float because the %d is for integers or type ints. So for a float we use %f. Okay. And we can just add it in at the end. Float1. Good. Alright. Next one we're going to go over is double. Remember, this stands for double precision floating point number. It can hold a lot more decimals.